Hello, and welcome to Behind the Pages, Leadership Unfiltered, the podcast series from the Association of Publishers in India. Friends, you know this series brings leaders from across the publishing ecosystem where we reflect on trends which are shaping our industry, and parallel we also tend to look at the future of the knowledge dissemination. So I'm particularly pleased to be joined today by Caroline Sutton, an International Association for Scientific, Technology and Medical Publishers, who's visiting India this week. In today's conversation, we will explore India's growing role in global research, and we would also try and understand what future holds for scientific publishing. So Caroline, it's a real pleasure to have you with us. Welcome once again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. So let me start, Caroline. Since you are in India this particular week, what conversations are you hearing on the ground?
So, first of all, it is fantastic to be here because this is the first time that I'm here in my role as CEO for STM. And so number one was meeting with our own members to hear how are they viewing things on the ground, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges. Equally, we're having some meetings with some of the key stakeholders. And some of those conversations are equally for me to really truly understand how are things shaping up here in India. How can we as STM support helping to shape those things in a positive direction for the communication of science and scholarship. And I think where I'm, learning a lot is, our members talking about this, how should I say, dualism here in India, that on the one hand, this is a growing nation in terms of research outputs, and it's growing in terms of quality outputs, but equally, there is this large number of not good outputs, low quality, or even some of the predatory or practices that contradict the research integrity principles that we would otherwise practice. And so we've got not a bell curve, but rather two clumps at each side. And how do we actually really try to support things moving in the right direction? So those are interesting things that I'm taking away about how do we help support developing the communication of research here in India, and how do we therefore connect that with supporting good outcomes and good inputs to research to begin with.
Very pleased to hear that, and absolutely, I think India is at a cusp where we could see the research output is growing. It's equally pleasing to hear from you that the quality of the output is also growing, but there are definitely still areas of improvement, and that's where STM support would really be hugely appreciated. So let's move on and jump into the questions that I have really packed for you for today, Caroline. Sure. Now, India's research output and global scientific presence have grown significantly in recent years, right? And if I were to really understand from someone like you, how is India viewed today within the global research ecosystem?
I do hear India referenced rather often because I find myself in Japan, I find myself in China, and I do hear references to India and both collaborating with researchers. So researchers in China or Japan or the United States collaborating with researchers in India. So we're seeing that. And we're also seeing that, of course, in the outputs of articles, that you see a rise in the number of papers that are co-authored across international borders. So that's, I think, really important. Also hearing from our members about, recognizing now that, India is the third largest country in terms of output of articles. And so that's quite significant. And particularly at a time when you see the United States is stalling, maybe even will start to retreat a bit, given the situation there right now. China, of course, is accelerating, but India is third. And although the numbers are smaller than the US and China, that's a really important market to tap into. And so I think that there is a recognition that this is an incredibly important market, albeit I think as you and some of the other STM members maybe recognize, it's easily overlooked sometimes and really been viewed as India is the place where we outsource typesetting and some of the other services that publishers now regularly outsource. So bringing that back and focusing on investments in that, publishing the content from India seems to be an important topic. Though, as you were saying, perhaps a bit underserved.
I'm very happy that you echoed these sentiments. I think we have to really change the narrative. We have traditionally been looking at India from a particular lens, which is changing and changing very fast. So I think how can India really be positioned as a strategic market for the global publishers is something for all of us to really think about.
And I wonder too how that's going to evolve, given there are some geopolitical tensions that are evolving right now, right?
Yeah.
And is there an opportunity in that India becomes a somewhat more neutral market potentially, right? Where this is a good place to start investing and thinking about, because this is a young market from that perspective. We've got the largest number of STEM graduates across the globe coming from India right now. So what is that next generation of research going to look like, and how are publishers going to meet the need of those researchers is going to be a critical question.
Absolutely. So that brings my follow-up question, Caroline. Where do you see India's greatest opportunity, say, over the next decade or so? Is it, I'm just giving you some hints as well, though I should not. Is it about quantity? Is it about quality? Is it going to be a mix of it? Is it going to be around innovation?
Yeah.
We keep on hearing about GICs. I'm sure you would have heard the Global Innovation Centers.
Yes.
Many organizations, they are setting their innovation centers here in India.
Yeah.
So what's your view on that?
So one of the things I'm hearing, both from the publishers, but some of the stakeholders that we've spoken to during this week, is really about how do you take those goals, the GICs, and connect what India is looking for in terms of industries and areas of innovation where it wants to be strong, with education, with research, and how that links then into the publishing, right? You kind of need equal investments in each of those things. And we've seen in some other national examples where one is both looking very strategically at where does that country want to be strong. They then have invested in research alongside that, and then invested also in the publishing alongside that in order to support those three prongs. So I think that if publishers are keeping an eye on where is it that India is looking to be strong, that will give a good indication of where might we be thinking about developing our programs.
Sure.
And again, combining that with the fact that you do have this really strong educated population, largest number of STEM graduates, large number of STEM women graduates, I understand as well. So that is a massive opportunity, actually, if we can encourage more of those individuals to go into research in these fields.
Sure. Very interesting. So let's try and understand from you. Obviously we focused on India, but considering your role as a president for STM, how is scientific publishing evolving globally, particularly in the context of, say, open access, digital transformation, and obviously the new researcher expectations?
Yeah. It's so interesting because you mentioned open access, and I'm sure as a publisher you recognize this. And the thing that I find difficult to explain to funders or to governmental bodies in different countries is you're asking for one thing, but over in this other country they want something very different. And over in this third country they want something yet very different from that.
Yeah.
And if you are an international journal, international publisher, you're welcoming research from across the world. How do you make everyone happy? So there is this challenge, and I don't necessarily see complete convergence yet, right? So whereas India has turned to one nation, one subscription in the first instance, and we do see that India lags behind in terms of open access to version of record, in contrast to the global totals, as well as looking at many different countries as well. Though granting access through one nation, one subscription, other countries like the United States are going for a public access approach, right? We have seen that it is gold and transformative agreements that have really been driving most of the movement towards open access. But I'm clearly seeing that some of our mid and smaller publishers are also looking at models like subscribe to open, or thinking of, is there some other type of model whereby we have more almost like a subscription again for the institutions, but that's covering their publishing. So I think we're still in a messy phase. I truly don't think that this has really landed in terms of models where it's going to land. So that's the open access bit. But of course, then you lay on top of that AI that is going to potentially dismediate the publisher's relationship with the reader, that discovery potentially is taking place elsewhere. This is why I think work that STM collaboratively with other groups like API might look at of trying to push for how should we be thinking about content in an AI age, and thinking about how do we want to ensure that those AI tools that are being developed for researchers in particular are including citation, attribution, allowing us to see the genealogy of knowledge, which is so critical in this space, so that we don't end up throwing something away in this moment that actually is really critical to the ethos of science and the scientific process.
And I couldn't agree any more to what you said. Just I think it's that confidence in that AI generated content, the reliability. I think those guardrails are absolutely important.
And just to add to that too, I think initially there was a lot of sort of worry that this is sort of a negative thing, AI. But I have to say, one of the things that I have to say has been a silver lining in some ways is this is a great opportunity for us to be able to define what makes our content distinct from this other content.
Correct.
And so in some ways it's a real opportunity for us to be able to distinguish what we do. It's been hard for us as publishers to say what we do and why it's important, why you should care about the fact that we do what we do. But now it's forcing us to articulate that better. And it also gives us something to juxtapose our work up against. So I think there's also a great opportunity in that if we can think about the right guardrails we want to have in order to protect this content.
Sure. Very helpful. And Caroline, what role should publishers play today beyond just being seen as disseminating content?
So I think one of the things, and I think this is particularly useful in the Indian context, is really some capacity building. And I think this speaks to so on the one hand, you have, as we were talking about, a growing educated population. We see an increase in the quality of outputs from India, but still we're also equally seeing India as one of the nations that contributes the greatest number of papers that have research integrity issues. And that volume is hitting STM publishers, also the social science and humanities publishers. And so I think doing some of this on-the-ground training, which I know a lot of the publishers do, but I would encourage them to keep doing it, that capacity building to help researchers understand what is appropriate and how do you avoid that pressure to publish, how you should just really not fall prey to paper mills or other activities that really could have terrible consequences for the individual, but equally has terrible consequences for science and for scholarship. And
I'm just thinking, because this is so important, considering the amount of work STM does on this particular front, there is definitely a clear-cut opportunity for API and STM to work more collaboratively for the benefit of our members, for the benefit of consumers, researchers and all. So I think that was again a very insightful thing that you just shared. Now, obviously, this discussion would bring in the AI thing, though you touched upon it, but let me again try and reshape it. I mean, considering AI is reshaping almost every industry, and including research and publishing, at the same time, trust remains very critical.
Absolutely.
Right? So how do you see the role of AI evolving in scientific publishing while ensuring confidence remains in the research ecosystem? And there is another part to my question. And what does that mean for the kind of skill the ecosystem will need going forward? Right? So it's a mix of 2-3 things I've asked you.
Yeah, quite a few things. So remind me of the first bit.
So, that's okay. The first question is, considering AI is impacting
Yeah.
our industry as well.
Yeah.
But then trust remains so critical.
That's right.
So, how do you see the role of AI evolving in scientific publishing while ensuring the confidence in the research ecosystem is equally maintained?
Yeah. So I think one of the things in that trust space, there's a twofold thing here. So number one is I think that we have to get even better at catching these research integrity issues. So that's number one. Because, for example, as I and my team at STM are engaging in government affairs, and we're saying, look, this content needs to be protected, because in a world where survey after survey shows that people don't know what they can trust anymore, and young people in particular, this is a corpus that you can trust.
Right.
But we've got to make sure you can trust it, right? But of course, there are humans involved. So I think our being also able to explain and make it clear to those who are looking at our content, but equally those who want to train on our content. Look, sometimes we have to correct this, because every system has to have its redundancy activities in order to correct where humans do something wrong, right? So we have retractions, and I would say that's part of our redundancy system. So I think there's something in our being able to better articulate that system of checks and balances, so that people can understand why this is critical to not interrupt, let's say. Then I think in terms of, so our content has to be clean, but then we have to really hold, I think, as publishers and those who begin to license their content to AI developers for various reasons, and there isn't just one kind of AI, right? We throw that around many things, but I think training on the content, holding people, those who are going to train on the content, accountable to certain principles, so that we can really truly protect that ethos of science, I think is going to be important. I think in the early days, it was important that some did start to license, because that is very important for making the case that copyright and licensing works. We don't need government intervention in this. So I am very grateful to those who took the first steps and did that. But I also think going forward, being very clear about, look, we need certain behaviors. And so for me, this is where also copyright and licensing becomes very important, because it's the only leverage we have, because so many places in the world don't want to put guardrails around AI companies. So we've got to be able to hold them accountable to good practices. Because as we see, there are places in the world, it's not just about losing trust in our content, but there's in some places a declining trust in science and research itself. I don't know that's necessarily the case here in India, but we've seen that in a couple of, certain place across the ocean. Couple of oceans. No, I'm not mentioning any names. So I think that there's a very interwoven set of things that we need to be thinking about in this moment. We need to do an even better job than we're doing today. And I know that publishers are massively investing in order to do a better job than they've done in the past. But again, we've got to hold tech accountable so that it's also behaving in a way that doesn't generate distrust in science or distrust in our content, right?
You're so right. Ultimately, it all boils down to where does the accountability actually rest, right? I think that's very important. So we're almost at the end of this interaction, but before we could close, Caroline, this is the last question that I'm going to ask you. If I were to say, tell me if there is one shift that could really catalyze or strengthen significantly the India's research ecosystem and the knowledge ecosystem, what, as per you, that would look like?
I think because I'm hearing that quality issue is the biggest, and that in part this stems from the push for quantity over quality, that would be one important area. I think that could change in India. I don't think that publishers can necessarily be the drivers of that change, because that is being determined by others, institutions, and an entire system of driving for this type. But if we instead were really trying to think about how do we think about impact, how do we think about international visibility, how do we think about real world relevance, I think that could help to address the predatory publishing issues that we see here in India and some of the research integrity issues and move towards quality. We're going to need that for India to be able to really be a strong research output nation, I think.
Yeah, I think again, very well said. I would just say that, I mean, you did say that there is not much role that we could play, the publishing ecosystem could play. My personal view here is that, we could still do few things in order to help ensure that the new breed of researchers, they are better equipped, they understand how to really go about doing the research, how to write good papers, and how to ultimately really create that real world impact.
Yeah.
So we could obviously have a role to play when it comes to capacity building.
Yes.
And so our role is limited, absolutely, but whatever we could do in order to improve the ecosystem is where I think we should genuinely try and make an attempt.
Yeah.
So look, thank you so much, Caroline, once
Thank
again
you.
for such an insightful conversation. I mean, obviously it is clear from this conversation that India's role in the global research ecosystem, it is growing and it would continue to grow further.
Absolutely.
The collaboration between various stakeholders, whether in India, outside India, is going to remain critical as we continue to shape the future of scientific publishing. So thank you for joining us for Behind the Pages, Leadership Unfiltered from the Association of Publishers in India. Thank you so much.